Yeah.
I love my HBCU. And boy, I love it, love it. I love it, love it. I love my HBCU. And man, I hope my team they won. Yeah. I hope my team they won. Yeah. Man, I hope my team they won. I hope my team they won. Yeah. I tune into the HBCU Sports Lab to see if my team won or lost. If they lost, I'm quiet as a mouse. But if they won, keep tab. I'ma do the dab, yeah. Dr. Cavil, he know what he be talking about. Mike and Charles, they know what they be talking about. They compress the analytic data with the hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they won or lost, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gonna teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop, as we turn it on just like that. Welcome to episode 388 and Inside the HBCU Sports Lab radio show and podcast with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. The show that is covering the sporting HBCU dash for all things HBCU sports for institutions large and small. From the NEIA to the NCAA, we share insights and information on the HBCU sports culture, HBCU athletic aesthetics to facilitate the story of HBCU athletic programs in the business of HBCU sports. I'm your host, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, along with my co-host, Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. Mike Washington is still out on assignment, but we're filming from our home studios and sending a signal live. KSWH 1230 AM studios with the Texas Radio Hall of Famer, multi-Hall of Famer Ralph Cooper in a beautiful home at Texas Southern University from Houston, Texas. With that being said, Charles, how you doing today as you're trying to close out the semester, both as a student on one side, doctoral student that is, and as an adjunct professor on the other side? Grades got to be in, final examinations, a lot going on in your life right now.
There's a whole lot going on. You see, I kind of have the eyes forward right now, so I'm looking forward. To a happy Friday to get this stuff behind me. But we got a lot of great action this weekend. A lot of good sports to look forward to. A lot of baseball. We got tournaments going on, so it's going to be a fun weekend for some sports.
I agree with you, no doubt about it. I was cheating over here a little bit as you have the game time, if you would. You know how we premiere the game time on Saturdays. We got BCSN, my JVN network, as they are showcasing the SIAC baseball tournament. Don't turn it over there yet, or like they said, with all these people with these functional, you can watch both duo, put the TV screen with the volume down on one in terms of your iPad, if you would, or your phone, and then have us on the other with the volume up. We'll make sure you get updates as things get going in this final game of the day. We got some good news we can share with you and tell you a little bit in regards to the fact that we have a champion that was named. So many sports going on. Softball, NIA level, softball at the NCAA Division II level, softball coming up at the Division I level, and the SWAC this weekend. Next week, I should say, you got track and field this weekend at Prairie View. A lot going on. But before I share with you, get the update, today's episode of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab is sponsored by THG Agency, LLC. THG Agency is a company that provides sporting and educational consulting and data analytics. With that being said, let me get this completed. Edward Waters, as they transition over from the NIA to the NCAA Division II, they come over with style, particularly in terms of softball, getting it done. The women of Edward Waters, those Tigers, come in as the number seed in the East, and they make it hold up as they get it done in the championship today over Tuskegee Golden Tigers.
Wow.
In that first game, they did not have Tuskegee, couldn't force a second one. But through undefeated in the tournament, 43 or 40-plus wins, 43 and 19 and 3 over the season, defeating almost a 30-win Tuskegee Golden Tigers team in terms of what the Tiger Reds, as they like to be called on that side. They a big game against Spring Hill that in the extra innings went 12. And then they exploded for 4 runs in 12th inning of that game that kept them in the winning bracket, if you would, the undefeated bracket. And they just got it done. And Spring Hill lost, obviously, to Tuskegee to put them out and put Tuskegee in the championship game. But Tuskegee had a great run, couldn't quite get it done. As congratulations goes out to Edward Waters Tigers as they win a SIAC champion, essentially their first year full membership in the conference. Shout out to them. I wanted to put that out there and kind of jump out in front of that. With that being said, give you a chance to see what type of news that you want to share with the people today.
Yeah, let's take a look at it. We mentioned there are championship tournaments going on, especially with regards to softball. So the bracket has been set for the 2023 CIAA softball championship. The CIAA announced the field for its 2023 softball championship, the single elimination tournament featuring the top 8 CIAA teams based on conference winning percentage will begin this past Tuesday, May 2nd, with quarterfinal action on the campus of the higher seed advancing. So all quarterfinal games will begin at 1 p.m. and 3:30 p.m. This year's field is led by top overall seed Bowie State, who finished the regular season with a 14-2 conference record on their way to claiming their first CIAA championship title since 2009. So the Bulldogs will host number 8 seed Virginia Union, which is 6-10 in CIAA. And I believe when we take a look at that they started this past Tuesday. Bowie State has already advanced beyond that first round game there.
Yeah, good stuff when you talk about the CIAA. More interesting how that shakes out. While they take the top 8 teams, with the best record, but they play the season, if you would, in regards to the Northern Division and the Southern Division. So Bowie State, as you talked about what they were able to get done, they have a season where they won over 30 games, 32 and 30 to be exact, going 14-2 in the conference play. So it's going to be fascinating what that looks like, with the Northern Division seeming to be a little more top-heavy than what in the Southern Division. So fascinating to see how that will all down when you had Elizabeth City State and Virginia State, for example. They both went 10-6 in the conference play. But you get in the Southern Division where you have teams such as Clap. It couldn't quite get to 30 wins. Obviously, first win has put they're at 29-10, a 5-game winning streak. So they come in pretty hot in 2 of what they've done. Winston-Salem State at 12-4. And Fayetteville State 10-6 to give you those teams that come in the tournament with winning conference record, at least in terms of what they were able to get done. So fascinating. Seems like the perimeter, Bowie State, Clafton, Winston-Salem State, mainly in Bowie State. It'd be interesting to see how that plays out in terms of, and fascinating that you mentioned they start on Tuesday, get a couple of days, bring it back, and finish, the last part of the tournament Friday and Saturday over the weekend, if you would, in that facet. So interesting to see when you go through all these different conferences that feature HBCU programs, whether it's your traditional HBCU conferences, as we like to have them called, or those independent programs playing in conferences that are full of historically white colleges, and different from the Division II, Division I, or NAA, in terms of whether you take the top 8, whether you take all teams. All of them basically have the double elimination format. Do you have the crossover effect? And it's interesting to see kind of how that plays out in the tournament. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm always curious when you get in this tournament format. Just the fun part, at least, is trying to look and see where an upset could possibly happen. And I think that's the fun stuff, especially when you start taking a look at where teams are with regards to their seeding and things of that nature, to see if there is, just like basketball, is there a diamond in the rough that can catch lightning in a bottle, if you will, and ride it all the way to the final championship game. So coming in a particular seed, that's always fairly interesting to see where teams are, where they can come in, and where hopefully they can get hot at.
Good stuff. Do you have any data points that you've seen over the years of where you can kind of look for some upsets, certain seedings or certain pitching offense type of matchups? As you said, it's interesting when you get into these upsets. Anything that you kind of look for that says, hey, these are things that you want to look at for the fans out there in terms of what could lend to an upset?
When I take a look at baseball, To me, it's the guys that thumb the ball. They're the sort of the slow pitch. They just constantly throw off speed stuff. That's kind of what I keep an eye on with regards to those opening games to see if they can get those hot bats out in front on their front foot, things of that nature, and they're just off balance all game, and they can kind of ride the momentum of having a great start from one of those, lefties who just throws nothing but off speed stuff, or those right hand sidewinders, those guys who just throw sinkers and you just hit balls constantly into the ground. And if they can get a good first couple of games, those are the teams that just kind of ride the wave, if you will, and you just never know what could happen in the tournament. I always kind of pay attention to those, 4 or 5 seeds that a pitcher you really hadn't heard of, and all of a sudden, he throws a lights out game one performance, and it puts a team on their heels.
Good stuff. Let me stick with you and give some other updates. What are some other news that you wanted to share with the folks that's kind of hot, that has your interest right now?
Yeah, let's take a look at Reggie Barlow, the HBCU lifer. He was named the XFL
where you going?
Coach of the Year. The DC Defenders head coach Reggie Barlow has been named the 2023 XFL Coach of the Year after leading his team to the best record in the league. Under Barlow, the Defenders won the XFL North Division Championship and boasted a 9-1 regular season record. They led the league in scoring, 29.6 points per game. They were also tops in rushing offense, averaging 140 yards per game, and were number 2 in the XFL in total offense. The Defenders were in 7 games decided by, get this, Doc, 1 possession and fared an impressive 6-1 in those contests. So, of course, Reggie Barlow is one of 4 Black coaches in the 18 XFL. The longtime HBCU coach credits his success to the playing and coaching experience at Alabama State. Of course, he had a stellar career as a player and a coach at Alabama State. Also spent time at Virginia State as well, now coaching for the DC Defenders. So he is the XFL Coach of the Year.
Yeah, good stuff. One thing that I really can appreciate, Reggie Barlow, you see a lot of HBCU graduates, obviously, when they're asked about HBCUs and the connection. But he is up front in terms of his past history with HBCUs, obviously, as an alumni, SWAC, Alabama State, his coaching stint as a head coach at Alabama State and then Virginia State. During his interviews, he seems to be able to find a way to make that connection, that he is HBCU connected and proud of it. I happen to see him a couple of times on Keyshawn, J. Will, and Max in the morning as I get going in the day. One of the things that I catch up with, him and Keyshawn obviously played. People may not realize, but probably by now I've kind of heard that they played together as wide receivers, so they have a great connection. So they make sure that he comes on there and talks about, obviously, the success he's had this season with the team in terms of getting the Coach of the Year in XFL, as you just mentioned. But it's fascinating. And on that show, he does a lot to make sure he mentions HBCU and his connection there. It's funny him talking about their relationship with John, and they talk about some of them days, and they have you rolling real quick right there.
Yeah, it's nothing like listening to those old NFL stories. I tell you, those players, they can spin yarns for days. So,
well, on the other side, the APR scores are back.
Whoa!
With COVID, a little alleviation. We didn't have to bring those up for a while, so they're back again, and they're kind of doing what they do. APR scores are out for HBCUs. Here's how college football teams perform. We have them for all areas. You can go to the NCAA site and get those. Some better than not. But just in general thoughts, so you get some updates on this. The NCAA Academic Progress Report was recently released, and the numbers are mixed bag for HBCU basketball football. This is coming from HBCU Sports. On the promising end, several HBCU clips. The NCAA 930 benchmark score during 2021-20 academic year. Remember, it's a 4-year rolling period. So it goes back 4 years from that 21-22, and they reported the year before the actual year that we are in now. The next highest HBCU coming after Howard, which was the co-champion, tallied 962. So credit to Howard in terms of what they were able to do, get the co-champion and still do it with their APR scores. Highest of any HBC football program. Next highest was Norfolk State, which also competes in the MEAC with a 957. Kudos to those involved at Norfolk State to getting that. In the SWAC, you have Grambling football led the way with a score of 948, followed by Alcorn State at 945, Southern at 944, and Jackson State at 944. Oh, wow. HBCU men's basketball, Texas Southern, winning championships, but also getting it done in terms of the APR score at 969. Score topped all Black college hoops program. In the MEAC, South Carolina State received a 960 score to lead the conference. Hampton and North Carolina A&T, which both play in the Colonial, received scores of 931, 925, respectively. The overall score of all Division I athletes held steady at 984, despite slight decreases in the three most visible sports, according to the latest four-year results on Tuesday, to give you a little update there. Talking about women's side, national athletes in football and men's basketball, each numbers dropped by 2 points, falling 962 to 967. That's football and men's basketball, while women's basketball players saw a 1 point drop at 982. Baseball scores nationally remain unchanged at 977. Just to give you a correlation of what that meant across the board. Remember, APA scores are based on scholarship athletes earning 1 point each semester. They are academically eligible, and another point each semester they remain in school or earn their diploma. So that's going to be interesting of how this all figures out, obviously, with the transfer portal. Teams that consistently fall below the cut line of 930 are normally subjected to penalties, but the NCAA will again impose penalties starting in 2024-2025 school year after the COVID-19 suspension ends in terms of not punishing teams in terms of the HBCU scores. So one thing to think about there, just so you get an understanding on that. Lastly, the NCAA attributes the decline in men's and women's basketball and football scores to more players being ineligible to compete during the 21-22 season instead of those leaving school. So just to give you an update on that. Lastly, before we go to this first break and come back on the other side, we have a new coach, Coppin State hoops legend and former NBA player to replace Juan Dixon after the Juan Dixon era came to a disastrous end this past season. Coppin State University men's basketball team will be led by a program legend. The Eagles hired Larry Stewart, the star of the school's first NCAA tournament team in 1990. It's pretty cool that he gets a chance to lead his team as a head coach, replacing Dixon, who tenure was clouded by losing records and ongoing catfishing scandals, who was fired in March. Stewart, 54, was a two-time Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference Player of the Year in 1990 and 91. In 1990, the Philadelphia native averaged 18.7 points, 11.2 rebounds per game, as the Eagles finished 26-7 overall, 15-1 in the MEAC. Remember those matchups, and defeated North Carolina A&T 54-50 in the conference title game to clinch the first NCAA tournament appearance. After college, Stewart signed a rookie free agent with the Washington Bullets, along with Virginia Union's A.J. English, made the Bullets the last NBA team with two HBCU players on the same team. Intriguing history right there. Stewart played 5 seasons in the NBA with the Bullets and Seattle Supersonics, averaging 7.4 points and 4 rebounds per game before spending 11 seasons in Europe playing professionally. Stewart has been an assistant at Bowie State, Morgan State, Maryland Eastern Shore, prior to taking the Coppin State position, one he considers to be his dream job, and you can see why. Quote, "I bled blue and gold," end quote, Stewart told Jerry Bembry in Anscape late last month. Quote, "I've learned a lot as an assistant, and the skills I picked up running a program and building relationships with players would help if I got the job," end quote. And obviously now he got it. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. Kudos to Coach as he gets it done and gets his hand, Coach Larry Stewart. With that, we'll be right back after this first break. Stay with us. We'll be back on the other side.
Thank you guys for what you do for HBCU athletics. This is a fantastic avenue for all of us. This is our ESPN, so we love what you guys do. Brian, AD, Roy, all you guys at BCSN. We really appreciate what it is that you guys do for us.
The Cuvée Group is a Florida-based marketing and training consulting firm. We help businesses communicate to their target audience and engage them in conversation. We also help to expand their audiences, which will ultimately result in growth for those organizations. In addition to being a certified constant contact specialist, my colleagues and I are also certified in John Maxwell Leadership Principles. We use these proven principles to conduct workshops, training, and private coaching sessions for individuals and companies looking to take things to the next level. Contact us to schedule a free consultation. Issues today, don't delay, call Cuvée.
Since 2000.
Test the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they want a law, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with AD Drew. He is there actually in Albany for the SIAC baseball tournament. Got a chance to see some of the softball as well. So we're going to give him some updates. So he's going to be able to give you not only what goes on at the Division II level, his specialty in the SIAC. We'll get into some of the softball. We talked about the champions of the SIAC. But before we do that, we gave a little update in terms of CIAA and some of those matchups. I wanted to ask you, as one of what we refer to as the Division II HBCU guru, as well as NIA, as you specialize in following these teams, making sure you're keeping up statistically what's going on there. So just wanted to get your general thoughts in terms of CIAA. Talked about Bowie State really going in there in terms of their gaudy non-conference and conference record, as they're probably the preferred. They certainly go in there as the number one seed in terms of what they were getting done. And they faced up Virginia Union out of their own Northern Division. What are your thoughts on some of the things that's going on in CIAA? Any team particularly outside the state that you want to keep your eyes on, or is that the team you're expecting to get it done?
Well, outside of Bowie State, let's keep an eye on Claflin. Claflin is a top 5 team in the Black College Sports Network ranking, so that would be the one other team that I would say has a more than a puncher's chance of beating Bowie State. The team with a puncher's chance would be Fayetteville State. CIAA, interesting how they do their schedule. I did listen to the first segment. They play North and South during the regular season, but they don't take 4 and 4. You would think if you went North and South, you would take the top 4 in the North, the top 4 in the South, or which i.e. is what the SIAC does is softball, because they have East and West. They take the top 4 each side. Right. But also SIAC in baseball says everybody play everybody one series, and we go take the top 8 because everybody's played everybody. So you would think if they go take the top 8, they would make everybody play everybody once, because it's kind of unfair because the schedule is not balanced. You may have stronger teams in one division or another, so you really can't say is if you get 5 from the North and 3 from the South, and I'm just using that because I don't know the breakdown off the top of my head. But, is that really fair and equitable because of how the schedule is unbalanced?
Yeah, I find it fascinating when you talk about what just goes on one conference to the other conference. Charles, you want to follow up with a question?
Yeah, and I want to follow up. You were talking about Claflin and Fayetteville State. What is it about those teams in terms of them having a puncher's chance? Is it the hitting? Is it the pitching? What is it that they bring to the table that could challenge Bowie?
The one thing that I have noticed with the softball that I have seen this year, most of these teams can hit. Everybody has a pitcher. The good teams have 2 or 3. What has separated the good teams from the average teams from the great teams is mistakes. Are you making a mistake? When you've got when you've got runners on first and second with nobody out, and everybody in the stadium knows that next girl is getting ready to get up there and bunt.
Sure.
Does she pop the ball up on the bunt? Or does she bunt the ball so hard where you get to out at third base and you don't get the advance to run? Or let's flip that. When the girl fields the ball and tries to get that out at third base or at first base, does the ball wind up in left field or right field? I had a play today in the championship game, and we'll come back to this. Totally changed the momentum of the game. Edward Waters was up at that point on Tuskegee 4-2. They had bases loaded with nobody out. Ground ball to the shortstop. Ground ball to the third baseman was the first play. Force out at the plate. No problem. Didn't even try to get the run at first. Get the lead run, not the run down the plate. Next batter came up. Ground ball to the shortstop. Ball. She would have had to be Shaq on a ladder to try to catch that ball. The ball just flew out of her hand. Obviously not intentional, but the ball just flew out of her hand halfway up the backstop. Allowed 2 runs to score. Tuskegee was now 2-0. If they get out the inning without a run scoring defensively, the momentum changes because of your defense.
Absolutely.
With the top of your lineup coming up in the next inning. But because of that, now you're deflated. So that's what I mean. That's what the difference is. The teams that win minimize those mistakes. If they have an error, the error is with 2 outs. And they're able to go ahead and get that third out without a run scored. Instead of the error coming with already a run on and nobody out, and now you open yourself up to a big hit.
That is a perfect illustration, because that's the biggest thing I see watching college games, whether it's baseball or softball, versus when you get a chance to see the Major League Baseball. You can see an error in Major League Baseball. Very seldom does it cost a team in terms of runs in the inning, right? But at this level, I always look at the 2 outs play. Can you close out an inning, or can you rally with 2 outs? And the team that can do either one tends to be the team that has a little more success in winning. And it's compounded when you can't get that 2 outs because of this error. It doesn't just become 1 run. It's a multiple one, and you get those crooked letters that people tell you about the inning. Yeah,
especially when your pitcher is pitching a good game or has pitched themselves out of a jam. They've gotten the strikeout, they've gotten that ground ball, they've gotten that pop up you need, and you can't finish the play. Because remember, it takes a catch, a throw, and a catch on the other end most of the time to get that out. And sometimes one of those 3 does not go as planned.
Out of curiosity, because I've seen this especially with college baseball, players tend to speed up for whatever reason. I don't know if that causes more errors or whatever the case might be, but in a rush to make a throw, in a rush to make a play, they tend to get out of control, and for whatever reason, the play is sped up in their head. And I can't figure out why exactly that happens so much, especially in terms of college baseball, especially HBCU baseball. I don't know, what I can attribute that to, but I've just noticed, routine plays. You mentioned that wheel play on the bunt, in terms of trying to get that out at first or third. But it's just curious to me that these players tend to speed up that play a lot more in the head.
I can tell you one observation. Have you seen the speed that we played with? And I don't mean, you talk about speeding it up. Have you actually seen these players run?
Yeah.
These players get down that line.
Yeah.
So knowing that this player, we'll take baseball, that somebody can go get to first base in 3.3 or less, yeah, you better field that ball clean, and you better get it on a clean hop, charge the ball, don't let the hop come to you, and you better get it out your glove real fast. Because if not, you're gonna rush it, you're gonna throw it in the ground, you're gonna throw it over the first baseman's head, left, right, whatever, and you better hope the first baseman is about 6'4" and can stretch. Because we play with speed because we do the little league thing. They get on first base. What they doing 9 times out of 10? First pitch.
They gone.
Holler.
Yeah.
Holler. Because of the style that we play, it tends to lead to more mistakes. since we watch ourselves play each other, we see those mistakes. But when we play other teams, it speeds them up. Also, they're able to make those mistakes. But the problem is those teams tend to probably pitch a little bit better than us or make the initial defensive play a little bit better than us. So we never get the opportunity to put that pressure on them. Because when we put that pressure on them, on those teams that are non-HBCU, we tend to do good if we can get runners on.
Mm-hmm. Good stuff. Good breakdown. Questions, great comments. It reminds me of the play that's been kind of talked about this week, bad and good, really yesterday when the shortstop was in the play at first base and threw the ball up and then was able to throw them. Obviously, oftentimes you see in the big leagues, the players are not quite as fast as we see, to your credit, AD Drew. But one thing that I talked about in that is sometimes the play of that is a way to calm a player down. I think he was showboating a little bit, but also tossing up forces you to keep that concentration and play all the way through. Because I think people forget that baseball is one of those sports that it's about doing things over and over, but you don't always get those plays all the time. You're waiting for the opportunity of the ball to come to you. And if you don't find yourself emotionally ready all the time, and you're talking about young people, and we know anything about young folks that have kids or had teenagers or work with young folks, you know how fast their mind can be, especially in this current generation when things are coming so fast in terms of how they act on social media.
Microwave society.
So you're asking folks, right. So you're asking them to treat themselves in such a way, as you said, to slow down. So I wonder how much of that kind of play. It's like, and then he's out the Miles college game, as we told you, Kentucky State, just to give you an update at 3-3 after one inning, getting the second inning, and it looks like Kentucky State is threatening a little bit there in terms of the bases loaded. But we'll give you some updates as that goes on. And we'll come back and have you, AD Drew, for this second segment. Before you do, I wanted to finish out a little bit of the SIAC softball. You got to see some of that. Obviously, the championship game today, you called that. Give us a little update of just what you thought in terms of softball play, particular in terms of Edward Waters coming over in the SIAC at the Division II level and getting it done and getting a championship in softball program.
Edward Waters claiming their first softball conference crown since 2015 when they were an NAIA program and when the GCAC still sponsored softball. So congratulations to Edward Waters. Last year, they made the CIAA tournament as an independent in the NAIA. This year, they captured the SIAC championship, but will not be going on to the NCAA tournament because since they are still in their transition mode, Tuskegee, by virtue of beating Spring Hill on yesterday, will be the SIAC representative in the upcoming NCAA tournament. And let's be real, Tuskegee is going to be an 8 seed because they, especially with them backdooring their way in, losing today.
Right.
And I don't know how much time we've got before we go to the break, but there's a couple of interesting storylines in that particular game that I'd like to get into, but I don't want to take us over.
We'll hold over and take a break. We'll come back. Before we get into the baseball talk, we'll let you tell that story because I certainly want to get those intriguing updates out. I think people will need to hear a little bit about more about the softball HBCU. So it's a great time while we got you on to make sure we get that plug. So stick with us. We'll be right back after this break. We'll come back on the other side. We'll talk about the baseball in terms of SIAC. But before we do that, we'll let AD tell us a little bit about those nuggets as he shares some insight about the SIAC tournament and from a softball and baseball perspective. Stick with us. We'll be right back after this second break.
Since 2002, Empowerment Resources, Inc., a nonprofit organization, has empowered more than 1,500 youth and adults in Duval and surrounding counties through its programs Journey into Womanhood, Girls Mentoring, Life Skills for Teens, and Parenting Education Coaching. To get involved with programs, volunteer, or donate, visit www.empowermentresourcesinc.org. Follow us on social media, facebook.com/empowerment.resources and Instagram.com/empowermentJAX.
It's never too early to plant the seed, to share the tradition, and instill a sense of pride in your HBCU with your little ones. HBCU Pride and Joy Children's Boutique helps you share your school spirit with a wide selection of adorable kids apparel and accessories officially licensed from your favorite HBCU. Visit hbcupridejoy.com and follow us on all social media at HBCU Pride Joy on Facebook and Twitter.
From novice to aficionado, find yourself here. High quality cigars plus personal customer service. Slow Burn is Waco's only mobile cigar lounge, featuring a meticulous, curated collection of premium cigars. Visit our website, www.slowburnwaco.com. That's www.slowburnwaco.com. This is Ryan.
Press the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they want a lot, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil with Inside the HBCU. Eddie Drew, continue with the story. No, I had that dramatic pause, but we want to set it up for this conclusion that you're going to get to. Go ahead.
Tuskegee University head coach Dietrich Randall, third season as a coach at Tuskegee, second
That's
season
crazy when you talk about he was the pitching coach. Wow, that's great. Good job.
Yeah, that was the Edward Waters coach. But Coach Randall, 3 seasons on the Tuskegee bench, 3 conference championships. Lost as an assistant coach in 2019. Took over after the passing of head coach Edward Colvin. Edward Colvin, who won in basketball and in softball. He won 4 conference championships as assistant coach in basketball, took over the softball program, won 3 conference championships in softball from 14 to 16. Hired Randall. Randall took over from him, won a conference championship the first season coming out of COVID, and once again this year was in the championship game. Bring that all up to say 10 seasons in SIAC. Tuskegee has appeared in not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but not 5, but 6 championships.
Wow.
In 10 seasons in SIAC ball. Here's the asterisk to that, Dr. Cavil. 2 years they didn't have SIAC championships because of COVID.
Oh, wow. Right. Wow.
So 4 conference titles, 2 runners up, 6 out of 8 competitive seasons, Tuskegee has been in the finals.
Man, kudos to the Tuskegee softball program. Good stuff. Good nuggets. Go ahead, Charles.
So the question becomes, has the balance of power shifted to Edward Waters, especially, and you brought out this point, Edward Waters now no longer in NAIA, but playing on the NCAA level, has that upgrade at the talent. So the question becomes, potential talent upgrade, does that mean the balance of power has shifted in the SIAC?
We shall see. Year 1.
Not yet.
We'll see. It will be interesting to see.
I'm putting out my inner Mike Washington. There's not enough of a data point. Right now, this is a blip. This is an aberration right now. There's not enough of a data point. Keep in mind, Tuskegee and Spring Hill had played in the 3 previous conference championship games. So, and guess who played in the semifinals yesterday? Tuskegee and Spring Hill. Had played in the semifinals. So I can't say the power has shifted yet to Edward Waters. They still got the program at the school where I'm at on the other side to contend with, that being Albany State. They've got to consistently be at Albany State on the east side before they can talk about contending with the Miles, a Tuskegee, and a Spring Hill, who are the 3 powers on the west side. And then you've got this up-and-comer called Lane that just came out of nowhere this year. So truly went into that tournament. I had confidence that 6 of the 8 teams in that tournament could win them. And you don't really say that about baseball or softball, where depending on hitting, fielding, pitching matchups, 6 out of the 8 teams could realistically walk away and you would not be disappointed as a fan and say it was an upset.
Good stuff. Let's jump over here to the SIAC baseball. Obviously, in terms of this, you set this up earlier in the year, coming down to that last weekend with Albany State and Spring Hill.
I'm sitting here in right field. He made a diving catch going towards the right field line, caught it, then turned and wheeled and got it back to the infield. The runner was able to advance, but that ball gets past him. That clears the bases.
Hey, you got your jersey on. Why don't you just go to the bullpen, man, and just start warming up?
I'm going to go in the coaches, go in the booth, and do some more calling. He act like he got the microphone. Calling the game, play by play. Good stuff.
I'm sorry.
You got me. No, you got me excited. As Miles College is still 5-3, but they got the bases loaded, even though they got the one out. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But as I was saying, you talked about, hey, it's going to come down to that Spring Hill Albany State game, and it certainly did. And last week, I told everybody going to be fascinated about that matchup because it's going to determine the second and third seed, and that's exactly what happened. Albany State. The Golden Rams got it done in fashion. They swept Spring Hill, winning the first 2 games. They were close games, if you would, in terms of very competitive games. The third one, Golden Rams kind of won going away, but it pushed Spring Hill to third in the matchup. Still means that 2 and 3 Savannah State and Spring Hill, if things play out according to the brackets, they'll face each other first. In fact, they face each other tomorrow with that 10 o'clock game. In terms of that matchup, after the losing teams, Edgewater and Lane face up in the morning as well. So it's interesting to see what that's going to look like in terms of but as this is getting going, talk a little bit about that closing series between Albany State, Spring Hill, before we take our last break. And does that victory essentially put Albany State in the NCAA Division II tournament? Or do they still have to win this tournament to get in?
B.
Wow.
Choice B. They will still need to win the tournament to get in. They're sitting as the number 8 in the region right now. You know, so if they were top 4,
that explains it. You're right.
Yeah.
So
right now, they need the automatic. And I'm gonna let you ask your question second, Charles.
Mm-hmm.
Albany State almost screwed up today because they started the number 3 against Tuskegee, and Tuskegee jumped out early on them before Albany State finally opened it up. And I talked to Scott Hemmings, for the head coach at Albany State, for a minute after the game. He's like, man, they deserve to win that game. I don't know how we came back and won it, but we did. So trying to set your pitching matchups
with the bats too in Tuskegee. Yeah. Great.
Yeah.
10 run, 15, but the first 4 or 5 innings, Tuskegee had the momentum. Yeah, no. I watched that one. As you called it. It was good.
Yeah.
So I'm real curious about this, AD. I mean, especially you take a look at Albany State, they lead statistically, pitching, batting, fielding percentage. Is there a Morehouse game out there? Is there a Savannah State game out there? 2 blips on the ledger for Albany State. And the one that just threw me completely off was the loss to Morehouse. But you mentioned Tuskegee having early momentum. Do they even want to see the Maroon Tigers this weekend?
They will not see the Maroon Tigers this weekend.
Okay.
They're lucky they didn't make the tournament.
They didn't make the tournament. Yeah.
Wait, Maroon Tigers did not make the tournament. Tuskegee actually made the tournament instead of the Maroon Tigers because there was an incident at a Maroon Tigers game when some players got sent to the house. They wound up losing that game and subsequent games, which allowed Tuskegee to backdoor into the tournament.
Wow.
And basically get 2 nights in a hotel before they head on back to Alabama.
Oh, wow.
Man, great stuff. Hey, we'll let you go like this so you can actually get back to some baseball. But thank you for giving some insight. You can't get that anywhere else.
Nothing like per diem. Nothing like per diem.
From the SIAC. Exactly.
Everybody get a pizza.
Set it up Let me set it up for tomorrow for those as we close out the game right now. Top of the third is 5-4 in terms of the top of the third, bases loaded, 2 outs. Miles College is leading Kentucky State 5-4 in terms of this matchup. But tomorrow's game, Friday, 10 a.m., you have an Edward Waters game. They're playing on 2 fields. So you have Waters and Lane. They're in the loser bracket. So somebody's going to get 2 in Barbie. In the winner bracket, though, you have that Spring Hill Savannah State matchup. Spring Hill took the 3 early in the year. That's also that's 2:00 game played on 2 different fields. You have a 2:00 game, which is Tuskegee against the loser of tonight's game, Kentucky State and Miles. And then you have another 2:00 game matchup on a different field, which is Albany State coming out on the winners bracket, and they'll play the winner of this game, State Miles College. So that kind of set things up. They do have the 2 late games, the bracket games, in regards to 6:00 on the 2 different fields to get things on Friday before you get into your Saturday matchups and then your championship on Sunday. With that, we'll take our last break. We'll come back on the other side. Thank you, Drew, for giving some invaluable updates in terms of SIAC Division II baseball and softball. Again, we'll come back on the other side, give you some updates in terms of what's going to take place this weekend in the SWAC, to see what your thoughts are, Charles, in terms of those matchups. Stick with us. We'll be right back after this last break.
Q Time is a classic Atlanta soul food restaurant located in the historic West End. Q Time Soul Food is a family business started by Fred and Christine Crenshaw. Come on in, relax, and sink your chops into our tantalizing, mouth-watering, distinctive soul food with a twist, the Q Time way. 1120 Ralph David Abernathy Boulevard, or call your order in at 404-758-2881. Do you miss your mama's cooking? Then come on down to Q Time, an Urban Passport member.
Thank you guys for what you do for HBCU athletics. This is a fantastic avenue for all of us. This is our ESPN, so we love what you guys do. Brian, AD, Roy, all you guys at BCSN. We really appreciate what it is that you guys do for us.
Press the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna lose, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
Dr. Cavil's inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Charles. Before we get in baseball, any thoughts in the track and field championship? You know, it's been dominated by Prairie View, particularly on the women's side. Outdoor the last couple of years, but Alabama State is coming on strong. We've seen what Grambling has been able to do in terms of indoor meets. Anything that you want to kind of see that goes on with the outdoor championship as it got started today, but the really big races come out with the big guns tomorrow, and then the championships and those meets for the 100-meter dash 4x4 that everybody loves is Saturday. Yeah. Obviously, now you have that speed from Florida, Texas involved, so that key matchup is something that a lot of people are interested. But then you have the depth of the teams like Prairie View, Alabama State in terms of the field competition, as well as Grambling. What do you say? And I need to sneak in the plug. Jackson State is quietly sneaking around about making moves in terms of where they end up as well.
Well, I'm curious about this, about the track itself out there in Prairie View. I know that they had Olympic trials, maybe it was
trials, and they practice out there. And so USA, when they had the Olympics and the World Championships, they would actually come to practice before they left. And they always come back. So you're absolutely right. That track is one of the better tracks, particularly in this region. And so it's really nice in terms of getting fast time.
I was about to say, I mean, does that mean we're going to see some fast times this weekend, some challenges to those traditional, really good track teams from Alabama State and Prairie View.
Yeah, you kind of teased up on this switch to baseball this weekend as we're getting down to those final weeks where it's really going to play out in terms of the seeding for baseball championship tournament that's in Atlanta this year, right? Mm-hmm. So coming out of the big weekend, we talked about the Alabama State and FAMU matchup. So let me give you where teams are in terms of the seeding, the top 4 teams in each division. And I'll sneak in the 5th one just to let you know, is there any room for error in terms of that 4th spot that we talked about the previous weekend. So I'll give you the top 5 teams actually in each division. In the East, Mississippi Valley sits at 6-17. They're on a 3-game win streak after they swept, which was big for them. You have Jackson State 9-12. Bethune-Cookman sitting in the 3rd spot at 12-7. Florida A&M is sitting at 15-6, while Alabama State is sitting at 18-3. I had some texts and up from Coach Johnny Hernandez, who gave me an update that Alabama A&M and Bethune-Cookman will actually play 4 games this weekend. If you recall, one of the games a couple of weeks ago, early in the season, they couldn't get in because of the rain. They're going to make up one of those games. So Alabama A&M has agreed that they'll play 4. So the way they're going to set it up is Friday they'll play a single 9-inning game. On Saturday they'll play a doubleheader, 2 70-inning games. And then on Sunday they will play the 4th game. So bonus baseball in Daytona for those fans around there. Be fascinating to see what that looks like. As I told you all, and some people had a question about the rain outs. Because of the expansion of the conference, they start a week early and they actually end a week later because now you have 5 series that must be played with the 6 teams in each division. So you don't have a lot of room for rainouts to be made up. So you have to be creative. We saw this earlier with Prairie View deciding to take 2 of their games that were home games that were rained out. They decided to play those as week 8 matchups on Tuesday, and they went to Baton Rouge to get those games in. So that's the way they do it. They actually had to cancel one of their weekday games to get that in. Or you see teams that have maybe one game that they'll make up in flipping it instead of being a home game. They'll take it on the road game with the series. So you see that taking place there. Any thoughts in terms of the East Division at this point? Just in terms of the record. We'll get back to some of the matchups this next.
Yeah, in terms of the record, big weekend, I think you mentioned Bethune-Cookman. Can they get back on the winning track with regards to, they dropped 2 of 3 last weekend against Jackson State. And very curious with regards to Jackson State and FAMU, that weekend series, who can get 2 of 3 in that series? That's a big weekend series, I think, for Jackson State more so than FAMU.
Yeah, and we'll get a little more into the matchups this weekend at each of the games. But let's get into the top 5 teams in the West Division and see what you think about at this point, and if any team has an edge as they try to close out the season for seeding purposes and winning respective divisions. In this case, you had Arkansas Pine Bluff that made a move. They got 2 out of 3 from Southern. Last weekend that we kind of talked about, as you look up, stunned a lot of folks. Yeah. But it makes things just a little more interesting. Not that much, but we'll see, to have a little fun. Arkansas Pine Bluff sits at 5-16. Southern at 10-8. Prairie View, that lost 2 out of 3 on the road to Grambling, sit in the 3rd position at 13-7. Texas Southern 13-6, and Grambling State at 16-5. Again, we'll talk a little bit about the matchups because as we set up these divisions, you see what that looks like. Anything stand out to you thus far in terms of what is happening in the conference races, specifically in the Western Division, as the breakdowns before we get into these weekend matchups?
I was going to say I thought Grambling kind of got a foothold with regards to the SWAC West, and I take a look at the standings. Again, the Texas Southern is a game back in the loss column. So big weekend series, I think, for Grambling and Texas Southern, and I'm keeping an eye on Prairie View and Southern because it's been Lego blocks all season between first and second and third with regards to Grambling, Texas Southern, and Prairie View. It's that kick that we normally see with Southern in the second half of the season just hasn't happened yet.
Well, let's get into some of those matchups. You alluded to some that you want to keep your eyes on, so let's talk about them at this time specifically. Let's stay in the West since we're right there and you kind of name those. You have Prairie View at Southern in Baton Rouge. Been a tough place to play usually to some degree this year, but just last weekend, a couple of weeks ago, we saw that Grambling went in there and took 2 out of 3. Prairie View lost 1, but they played tough, and both of those games were one-run game when they played the 2 games on that Tuesday there. So all corners come in there and got a game in terms of what takes place. So it's fascinating to see about usually a very tough place to play. But it'll be interesting in terms of that matchup. Prairie View and Southern, what are your thoughts on that?
I pay attention to those Friday pitching matchups. And I look forward to Prairie View throwing Michael Dewes. He's one of the top pitchers in the Southwestern Athletic Conference in terms of innings pitched and strikeouts. So it'll be very interesting to see if either team gets that momentum, that kick from the Friday night matchup. And let's see if we have any sort of good Friday pitching performance like we saw this past week, because just quite honestly, it's been a couple of weeks now where we hadn't seen good Friday performances from pitching.
The other big matchup, you alluded to this, which has me fascinated, is right here in our backyard. So we'll get a chance to get over there to McGregor Park to get our eyes on Grambling and actually see them play and see what the Texas Southern, the Bats are doing well. So this is a feature match to 2 teams that are playing really good baseball right now. They have had historic matchups over the years, and so big-time matchup. I'm interested in this with Grambling coming in on the road to Houston. A lot of Grambling fans around here, so they'll be deep in the park. So you'll have a lot of fans, a lot of noise out there. I'm interested in this matchup. As you said, Grambling is trying to get a little bit of the edge and stake their place in that Western Division. But Texas Southern, they always have those late-season runs. They started off hot, a little bit of trepidation in the middle, but here they go on it run at the end of the season. What do you say about this Grambling Texas Southern matchup in baseball at McGregor Park Friday, Saturday, and Sunday? I'll get over there Friday. We'll see each other on Saturday. And then again, we get those matchups on Sunday.
Friday night, we get a chance to see Abraham DeLeon, one of the top pitchers in the league for Texas Southern, 2.59 ERA, and he has good stuff. He's one of the top pitchers in the league in terms of batters striking out. He batter in terms of batters looking. Has 42 strikeouts in regards to that. He also eats up a lot of innings. So the Friday night pitching matchup looks like hopefully be Abraham DeLeon going up against either Lorenzo Peterson or Connor Rudy for Grambling. Very interesting. Both of those pitchers for Grambling, they've eaten up a lot of innings this season, both in the top 5 in terms of pitching in the SWAC. So very interesting with regards to that Friday matchup. But the rest of the weekend series, whose bats come to play? Traditionally, Grambling has those sluggers that really knock the ball out of the park. But Texas Southern, they're number 2 in the SWAC in hitting. So, and they have one of the top hitter in the SWAC in Adderley. So it'll be very interesting to see what Texas Southern and Grambling get into this weekend. Big matchup, and it's I expect for it to McGregor Park to be rocking this weekend.
Oh yeah. Well, we're going to take our bag and a ball. We're going to go on the road. Specifically, you got Jackson State traveling on their buses, getting down to Tallahassee. MU in that matchup, always a lively matchup. You have a team with the Rattlers that are kind of soaking in wounds, losing those games, if you would, to Alabama State. Can they rebound to get it done? This is a matchup. What are your thoughts in terms of Jackson State that feel a little better about themselves? Getting 2 out of 3 from Bethune-Cookman in terms of those matchups. What do you think about this weekend with Jackson State going on the road to Tallahassee?
Well, you touched on it, Doc. I mean, in terms of feeling a little bit better about themselves, it's been a tough season for Jackson State baseball. They've been looking up, quite honestly, at Bethune-Cookman, FAMU, and Alabama State. But that was big to get 2 out of 3 against Bethune-Cookman. Can they carry over that momentum to take on this Florida A&M squad, looking to bounce back from that weekend sweep against Alabama State. So this is a really interesting matchup. Can Jackson State bring those bats and get some things going with regards to guys like Ty Hill, who's second in the SWAC and hitting? He's batting over 400, batting 411. And you also have Daniel Bannon for Jackson State. He's batting 367. So Jackson State really needs to hit the ball well this weekend, going up against some pretty good family pitching.
I love it. I love it. Let's go a little bit off the radar. Alabama State, they're getting votes in the top 25. Deservedly so, playing some good baseball. Took the two toughest teams at the time, second, third place in terms of just getting the series, but sweeping those series 2 in a row. So yeah, they're playing some great baseball, getting big wins during the week as well in terms of what that looks like. So, but you got a Mississippi Valley State that's pretty good about themselves as well. They've been sneaking up with folks, getting it here and there. I ask this differently. Can Valley get a game? I know questions about the series. I don't know about that. But Alabama State is the road. Can they get one? If you get the one, then you get a little greedy. You want to take 2 and surprise the world in terms of taking a series from Alabama State, which hasn't been done this year in terms of conference play for the most part. What are your thoughts in terms of this match?
Didn't they take one from Alabama State earlier? I mean, or if I'm not mistaken, then I have to check. I thought, if I'm not mistaken, because it caught me off guard, I thought Valley did at least get one game from Alabama State earlier this season.
Yeah, I'll check on that as you're talking about, because I think that's a great question. Let's get into that. And I can verify in terms of series, because I do think Bethune-Cookman earlier gave them a run for their money. But Bethune-Cookman was able to get just one win. They in terms of their early series, and we talked about the second time they got swept. The Valley series, did get a game, close one, 7-6. Valley game.
Here's the fun thing about Valley, and AD talked about it, especially on this level. If they can get some guys on base, they become real fun. They are tops in the SWAC in terms of stolen bases. They swiped 123 bases out of 160 attempts thus far. So they're playing a much better brand of baseball. And if you're asking whether Valley can get one or this weekend against Alabama State, they have a puncher's chance of getting one because they play a fun brand of baseball. Once they get on base, they're looking to take off and get some bags and get some things going. And it does. It speeds you up. You tend to make errors with teams like that. So anything can happen when you're talking about Mississippi Valley trying to get 1 out of 3 this weekend.
Yep. And that earlier series, first series of conference play, Bethune-Cookman did take 2 out of 3. They were at home in terms of that. So Alabama State has the overall series because with the sweep, that means they've taken 4 out of 2. But they have lost the series, but they've been hot ever since that first weekend of the SWAC. So fascinating to see what's going on there in terms of those matchups. We'll get into softball and MEAC updates in terms of what that took place. We gave you those updates on Tuesday. So we'll call it a close today. Wanted to give some updates here and say thank you for listening to Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Make sure you share our podcast with your friends and colleagues in terms of the update of the game between Miles College and Kentucky State. Miles College still leads 5-4 in terms of what's going on in terms of that matchup. I'm Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, the Dean of HBCU Sports, coming from inside the lab in the College of HBCU Sports with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Mike Washington is out on assignment. Again, we want to thank A.D. Drew coming in and giving us an update of what's going on across the board out of the SIAC and CIAA in terms of softball there as well. We look forward to next week as we discuss the latest news in the lab. And you can catch us at Tuesday and Thursday at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. As you know, it's Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. We look forward to discussing the latest of the news next week. Follow me, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. That's DrKenyattacavil. Inside the HBCU Sports Lab 1 on Twitter. That's Facebook and YouTube, Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Make sure you follow Charles as he continues to give you updates and news in terms of what's out there. Obviously, ONG Strike Zone every Wednesday. Carlos Brown Show on Saturday. And then again with AD Drew, Brian and AD Drew, or Sports Wrap on Sunday to get all your latest news in terms of the HBCU sport around. Download my JBN, my BCSN as we get you going. Dream big and continue to move forward. We will talk to you soon. Make sure you check out the SIAC matchups. BCSN will give you all the latest news there, the big matchup as you close up on the tournament. Great film as they did the track and field champions for the SIAC last weekend. Earlier this weekend, you had the softball champions that culminated with Edward Waters. Kudos to them. But again, dream big. Continue to move forward. We will talk with you soon, Charles.
Of course.
Lecture, Charles.
Dismissed.
Oh, brother.